welcome back to the SBP Podcast Mobile Filmmaking. You're listening to episode 182, and I'm your host, Susie Botello.
We are Fade into Film.
Hey. Say hey.
Hi.
Hi.
I was like, who's going to talk?
I just thought we would just kind of open up like we usually do, or like we never do, or like we did at the film festival that we were just in. Hi, guys. We're back in the
hello.
in the home studios for this episode. We're here with Levi and Levi Austin Morris. Look, I said your name right, Levi.
You did.
And Ryan McDonald.
How's everybody doing?
There we go. Yeah. So we're back in sync. We do have some news. Levi is going to be, this is going to be the last episode for a while because he's busy in distribution for his film and doing some more films and all this stuff. So, but he will be back occasionally here and there as time permits. So, so we're going to miss you, but we're not
miss you guys.
But we're not going to forget about you because you're still coming back at some point and we're still friends. So.
Yeah. I'm literally a text message or Facebook message or whatever away.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah. And if you're ever in San Diego, don't forget fish tacos.
No, of course. Well, or just Susie. I don't need the fish tacos. Shrimp tacos, yes. But no, I don't need the fish ones.
So let's talk about the first thing that comes to our mind since the last time we met in person, guys. We had an extraordinary time at the festival here in San Diego, which feels like it was this last weekend, but it was the weekend before that. Yeah. It was incredible and it was amazing. It was great meeting Joey in person. But anyways, why don't you guys share a little bit about your perspective?
Whoops.
I was like, what is happening?
My Blu-ray of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood fell. So
okay.
Important stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I mean, there's the cat and then there's that.
I hold movies while we talk so that I have the inspiration.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah.
So, Ryan, you and Levi met in 2021. Was it 21? Yeah. Or was it 22?
It was 2021. No, it was 2021.
Okay.
Yeah. It's 21.
Wait, no, maybe it was 2022.
I think it was 22 because I think 21 we ended up having to have it virtual again.
Yeah.
So 22.
I guess it must have been 20. Yeah, because it was 2 years ago when I was last year. Now we're in 24. Yeah. So.
Yeah, imagine that. So anyways, now that we got that right, like it really doesn't matter, but you guys met.
Sure.
At one of our film festivals. And then Levi was here for 2023 and Ryan wasn't here. And it was really, what did you think, Ryan, about, from your perspective, right? Having come back after a couple of years, the differences between, and I don't mean like, comparing like apples to oranges, right? Or anything like that. But would you say it's a tighter community?
Well, yeah, I think, to answer your question, but like, I think, the first time I was so much more of a guest. And this time I think because we chat every other week, and now we've known each other for, I think I was thinking about it today. You and I originally spoke back in 2020. I think that's about the time that I started connecting with Levi as well, because that same year, I think you had your short film at the time in that same festival going.
Oh, and we did that Zoom thing together.
Yep, we did the Zoom thing. So that's technically where we met, was over Zoom.
Yeah. And so I think for me, it was kind of almost like it had that just a familiar kind of thing. It was like, so pulling up to the festival, having already been there before, especially I live out of state, so it was kind of like that feeling of not necessarily nostalgia, but like familiarity in a sense.
Like friends who get together and go to a cabin
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah.
And
And I think, you know, even meeting Joey, though I've heard his voice so many times,
yes.
we've had conversations, but then seeing him face to face, but it did feel as though like I didn't just meet this person. It felt like I've
reconnecting with an old friend.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And then, and in the short time that the Levi, you and I, you know, spent that day together.
Yeah.
But it felt as though like we kind of weren't reconnecting. It was like because we speak, you know, every other week. So.
Yeah. It was like, oh, I'm just getting to see you.
Yeah.
Like, but
Just this time now you're here.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
But I will say, I did feel like there was like, and maybe it's because like we do this over Zoom, or not Zoom, but you know, we do this over the interwebs.
Yeah.
That like there was something really magical about being in the same space as you guys. Like I was able to like reach out and smack you on the back when I was laughing at something you were saying, you know? So it was like, that was really fun for me to be like, oh, now there's like a physical side of this relationship, and I don't mean it in a weird way, but like it was nice. It was fun.
Yeah, there's something about
you do.
having this conversation. And at this point, like we're talking right now, we're not looking at each other. You know, we're not in the same room or anything, but at the same time, we feel each other in a little. I mean, we always do anyways, but like there's a little something extra now, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know. I mean, I feel like there was like, yes, in that, like, I feel like once you're in the space with somebody, there's a face to a name and everything. And like, we all know what Joey looks like.
Yes.
But actually being in the space with him now, there's definitely like, I can picture him, you know, as you know, in these situations. But I don't know. It's I don't know. I just have so much affection for all of you that it's just like it was a very fun experience to have that live podcast experience for me. So, yeah.
Well, maybe like the feeling of like when you go back home, in a sense, like when, you know, when you've lived out of state and you kind of like go back to your hometown, and that's I guess kind of what I mean. But certainly, I mean, Levi, you and I chatted about this a little bit, where it was like when we're in front of each other, it's easy if you're speaking and we kind of overlap each other. It sounds so kinetic, but when we're doing it as where we are now, either Zoom or over the interwebs, like it almost seems it's a little bit more like you speak than I speak.
Yeah, it's a little more formal where where it's like I kind of have to give you space to finish your thought, and then vice versa. Yeah.
Audio conscious.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something that happens in even when you're just talking to someone on the phone. Yeah. You know, because you're trying to listen.
Maybe this just means that Ryan, Steph, and Joey all need to move to Southern California so that we all can just meet up.
Because I'm not going to New Jersey, let me tell you. When you're from San Diego, that's just too cold.
That's so funny.
And there's the fish tacos. But anyways, so yeah, I think for me though, having had this podcast for so many years, and I've recorded some solo episodes, and I feel like I have a connection to our listeners, and that's never been lacking. Even when I have a guest, I always refer back to you guys who are listening. And so you're always sort of in the room with me, no matter who I'm talking to. Through the Fade into Film panel, though, because it's been every other week and so regular, it seems like it would be easier to forget about you guys. But I think because the podcast didn't start out that way, I will always feel that connection to you guys, to you who are listening, aside from whatever happens with the podcast, no matter who's on. And so, but I feel like if I would have started the podcast with, you know, a panel of people, it would have been easier for me to disconnect from our listeners, which I know is a problem with podcasters sometimes, where they're not connecting with their audience, the listeners. And some of them have like avatars and things like that they put in front of them so that they can feel like, oh, by the way, I'm talking to people. I'm not just talking to the wall, you know.
Sure.
But for me, it's always very direct with them. And what you guys were talking about, you know, the coming home feeling, I kind of felt like that. Now, you've both have submitted films to the festival before as filmmakers. And you know that I'm very much in touch with you as a filmmaker, communicating and keeping you, you know, not keeping tabs on you, but letting you know how things are going and where we're going next, what we're doing next. You know, there's a process to it. And by the time we get to the film festival, I feel that feeling of, hey, we already know each other.
Yeah.
You know, and I think I get that more and more now from the filmmakers in the last few years than I did even in the beginning, even though we have that connection, you know?
And even coming in, like, because Allison and I only came for Sunday, but even coming in just for Sunday, like, you sort of create this atmosphere that sort of establishes that energy. So for us coming in a day late, meeting all of those filmmakers was not intimidating. It was nice. It was like, even though like I did miss some of the people from last year because I had such a connection with them. I still felt very comfortable with everybody immediately. Like at lunch, I sat with Jeremy, you know, and we ended up chatting and getting to know each other. And then the Iranian filmmakers, I chatted with her and her son as well. And so it was very exciting to get to chat with people, you know, and meet new filmmakers. And I feel like that's something that you establish very well, is creating this sort of fun atmosphere that it's like, it gives people permission to get to know each other, you know? Whereas, like, I've been to other film festivals where it's like everybody sort of stays segregated. And I'm not saying that's true for every film festival.
Right.
Like, I've been to some where it's like you are absolutely networking, making new friends, you know, like, but I've definitely been to some where it's like it just feels like you kind of stick to your thing, and, you know, yeah. And I mean, I guess, sorry, I'm going to go off on a tangent, but like, I'm thinking of last year too, where everybody, and I'm sure it happened again this year, but I missed the main day. But after every film, I remember everybody cheering,
yes,
you know,
totally happened.
And supporting each other. And I think that is one of the coolest experiences. Like I have that with a handful of festivals that we went on with Paralysis, but that wasn't true for every festival. There were some festivals that, like, I would go to people's films and I would never see them again, you know, so like there's a very supportive community, I feel like you foster.
I think that also comes, and thank you for saying that. I need to accept if something sounds like a compliment.
It was a compliment.
Yes. No, and thank you. I'm blushing. It's a good thing that you can't see me. But I think one of the, when it comes to organizing an event like this, right? You have to set it up with that goal in mind. Like, remember, you know, last year, how the breaks that I had between the sessions. All right, here's session 1, and now all of you go out and have lunch together.
Yeah,
you know, here's session 2. Now everybody get together and network and have a bite or whatever. And I think just little things like that for me are strategic, because they emphasize, well, what are we going to do now? Oh, we're going to talk about each other's films. And that's just a natural thing. And, you know, before the festival, you know, telling everybody it's really important that you are there to support each other, which is something that I have been in film festivals before. It lacked that. And again, like you, not all film festivals are like that, but the ones that are normally in a theater and it's just the showings for like a week or something, and then they have the award ceremony or something on a different date, the ones that I had been to, it's like people just sort of wander into a theater and kind of wander out, you know?
Yeah.
It's just a different way of doing it, but it's a more common way, I think, especially for indie film festivals like this.
There's an interesting thing about filmmakers that I think that is where there are some who they don't want to play nice in the sandbox in a way, and there's a bit of competitiveness that's like we can't like if there's been, don't get me wrong, there's been some times where I've seen somebody else's short film and it was so good that I was like internally I was like, son of a bitch, like that's really good.
Sure.
Like intimidated in a way, or
no, like I'm jealous in a sense.
Okay.
Like I'm jealous of like how well they did. Like that's a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
I was years ago, it was a film festival, and somebody had taken it was like a Friday the 13th like slasher thing. But it was set to the protagonist like in front of the screen was singing a song from Cats, and it was hilarious, and it was so good.
Oh my God.
But not, when I say jealous, but not in a hateful way, but like in a way,
Sure.
but in a way of like envy, but not to a point where I don't want it, where I hate that person, but just, you know, kind of like just, like, wow, that was really good. And damn it, I should have come up with that, but I didn't, but they did. And so there's,
are you a Leo?
I no, Cancer.
You're a Cancer. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
No, that was not random.
Well, I just like, because I don't feel that, like, I get excited when I see somebody's work that like gets me, you know, like, oh God, that's so cool.
Yeah.
You know?
What I'm saying is that like what I mean to say is that like I'm really I like it, and I can be jealous and envy, but at the same time it's like I don't hate the person for it. Actually, I'm excited to go meet them and excited to chat with them, and then hopefully like connect, and maybe it just something, because it's like that movie is so good that now I have to go speak with you. But then I've also been at film festivals where maybe it was my film that was that, and people don't want to talk to me at all. And there's like a bitterness or something like that. And it's like, well, but shouldn't the rising tide like raise all boats? Like,
I've been at film festivals that had that same experience, Ryan. Where it's like, wow, you made such a wonderful film, and they act kind of snobby. I mean, I'm just gonna say it. Yeah, like
it's like, look, we can watch David Lynch films, but you don't need to dress just like the guy when you're still in film school. Like you know, and be, I don't know. So it's like, so. I've won awards. I've been at film festivals where I didn't win. Somebody else did. I said congrats. Then same time I was at the festival a year later with Frankencock, and we won. And the same filmmakers, they don't even say hi to me.
I just need to say again, I love Frankencock.
Yeah. And that's what I mean. So like saying that about now coming back to our festival, Susie's festival.
It's our festival. Let's face it. Come on, I like that. Is
where, you know, where the community is rich, and and it's. So we're speaking with the person who won the feature film competition, and you know, she shot her film in one, you know, 120-minute long take on a
which
film.
was insane.
120.
Yeah.
So he banu Zogar.
Yeah, and so that's where I mean, where like I spoke with her and I hear it, and I'm like, wow, I'm jealous in the sense of like that she did it, but not in a way of intrigue. Yeah, I'm jealous in a way of intrigue of like, wow, like how did you do that? And then especially hearing from her perspective, where she from her country of origin, and the government was like trying to censor them the entire time they were making the movie, and
just so that you all know, we are planning on having her as a guest on the podcast, so that she can tell that story in her own voice, because it is, you know, guys, when she was, and when I say guys, I'm talking to guys and girls
in the audience,
all ages.
I call everybody dude, so I call my wife dude. I call everybody dude. So if I ever call somebody dude,
so I'm talking to our listeners.
That's funny.
That Well, now I got distracted. I distracted my own self. See, go ahead, Levi.
Oh, I mean, you were just saying that you were going to have her tell the story herself in her own words on the podcast.
Yeah, because it's one of the, okay, so now I remember. So my point was that she made such an impression and she inspired so many people. So
yeah.
I got to speak with every single person there and, at the festival, and everybody, whether they were a filmmaker or Jeremy was a judge, who's also a longtime friend. And everybody had that same feeling of, wow, like they were just so inspired by her and what she did and what she had to go. I mean, we have to go through a lot here, right? And in Europe or wherever you happen to be, you go through a lot to make a film and complete a film, especially a feature film. But what she had to go through to make that film, and then to make it to our film festival, by the way.
I mean, but even with that aside, because I unfortunately, like I said, I missed the first day, so I did not see the screening of her film. However, and I mean, we're all aware of this, I was one of the judges for the feature film category, so I had seen both hers and Ian's film. And I was like, same thing as Ryan was saying, I was so impressed by just the technical aspect of that. She shot this in one take, and I kept going, did she hide a cut? Like, how did they do this? Because the lighting stayed consistent, the everything stayed consistent, like the pace was solid. I was just so blown away. So then when I was there on Sunday, I caught tidbits of her story and how difficult it was for her to film this, and it got me even more excited. But even just seeing the film and not knowing her story, I was like, I'm excited to find out who this person is, you know?
And I was crossing my fingers, like, okay, I hope she can make it through, I knew her intention. I knew she was going to make the trip and everything, but there's all this stuff that's going on. It was like, okay, let's see, if it can happen. And she made it. And I was just thrilled. There were a lot of other people in the festival, other filmmakers who made shorts and things like that. Also, and the other people that were there that were also, they were really, their vibe was very jovial and very bright. Duwani Shaw and her team from Sapling, from her short film, who won first place. They really made an impression.
I met them at the very end. I didn't have a moment to connect with them throughout the festival, but at the very end I met Lydia and the rest of the crew, and I was just like, oh, you are all fantastic people. But they're New York, so Joey, you can have them wherever you are.
There was a lot of really awesome people there. The vibe was great, and then of course, we had Joey's workshop was pretty cool.
Oh, it was so cool.
And watching that film, the No Budget Zorro.
No Budget Zorro.
So we watched that because it's available on YouTube. We watched that for Cinco de Mayo.
Yes.
I love that.
But did you watch the whole piece? Because normally it's 2 episodes, and he turned it into 1. So maybe he uploaded the whole thing, right?
Well, we watched 2 episodes, so if there's something that was missing, I don't know. But it was, because obviously I was there with 2 of my girls, but I didn't have the other 2 plus my wife, so I wanted to share with them, and it was, obviously it's hilarious, and it's Zorro thing. So for Cinco de Mayo, that's what we watched.
Can we give a shout out to Swords and Circuitry Studios with Neil Halford and Jana Halford, because their sound system is pretty awesome.
Yeah. Also, Neil is just absolutely lovely.
Yes.
I've now met him.
Yeah.
I've met him 3 different times, and I just think he is so nice and so fun. So it's always exciting when I get to see him as well.
The coming back to the workshop, you know, we all do low budget stuff, and so in the films that I've been doing, I'm not like Tom Cruise doing my own stunts, but I do
You're
my
Tom
own.
Cruise to me, Ryan.
Yeah.
I mean, with the suit you were wearing over there.
Right? Yeah.
I noticed that Levi and I show up, like it's like in Beetlejuice where it's like where he's like, hey, we would shop at the same store.
Yes. Yes. With our black blazers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so I've had a couple of moments where I was doing my own stunt and it all went wrong, and it was one of the short films that I acted in years ago that we shot with an iPhone 6. I actually ended up getting my nose almost half broken. The actor punched me, and so when Joey and Stephanie were doing their presentation, and they're like saying how, like, you know, from a side angle you don't have to be that close, like it's actually better if you're not, blah blah, and if they miss, like they don't actually hit you, and yada yada. I'm like, oh my god, like yes.
Yeah. I mean, you say that, but we even did like in Paralysis, it's obviously it's not high end stunts, but like there's a couple of scenes where Allison had to fall on the ground, and then there was a scene where the demon sort of tackles her by the basement. And the one where she fell on the ground, we did do what Joey had described, which is, you know, you take two different shots, one where she's stumbling out of frame and then the other where she just stumbles onto the ground. So like she didn't get injured on that one, but the one where the demon tackled her, like she got bruised, like she, you know, and then there's one in the basement that she has to throw herself against the wall. And I'm like, we could have done this in a safer way. Like, yeah.
Yeah, it's good
So, sorry,
to know.
Allison.
It's good to know those things because you know you don't want. I think also on low budget films, since people are not making as much as, you know, Hollywood stunt coordinators or anything, if you're going to ask them to perform stunts and then not pay them so much, please make sure that they're all in one piece when they're done.
Yeah.
You know.
I will say, I did ask Allison throughout filming. I was like, is this okay? And she kept saying, yeah, no, it's totally fine.
Yeah. And then she's limping away.
But in hindsight, I think we both are like, in the future, we'll do a safer way.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I also thought it was really, really cool in the film, which is why I was bringing up the audio, the sound effects, you know, the sword, the sound of the metal swords, the horses,
and everything. And,
you know,
they
have these toy, what are those called with the stick? The horse heads with the stick, the way they handled those, the camera movements, then they made everything look, they were wearing ponytails, you know?
I mean, I feel like Joey's comedic voice is so specific and so on point. It was just such a joy to get to watch that, you know?
I think it was really cool to watch it on the big screen with that sound.
Yeah.
I mean, because I had just watched it again the night before, just because I'm a dork. But I watched it again the night before, and I was laughing my head off, and I was like, damn, this is going to be really cool and it was even better. I mean,
it was such a fun experience.
And especially with everyone there.
Yeah,
that's actually, now you're saying that. Yeah. That's a short where I was jealous of like the comedy of like the way that they, like with the horses and the dynamite and things like that, where I was like, wow, I was like this, I was like, but jealous in a way of like, I'm so glad I know this person.
But literally I leaned over to Allison and I was like, I don't care what it is, but I am hiring Joey at some point. And then he brought up the whole, well, you don't have to hire me. You could just, you know, buy my tutorials. And I was like, that's not a bad idea either, but I'd rather hire him, you know, like, so at some point I want to hire Joey and his team to, when I have millions of dollars. And Ryan, I'll hire you.
Gotta pay your actors. Gotta pay
you.
You
have to pay me. I'll do my own stuff.
Okay.
I'll be there.
I love it.
No, that was really awesome. And and letting everybody know, because Joey and Stephanie each they're like the right brain and the left brain, right, together. And I think that's part of why they're successful. And they probably, if they were here, they would be, what do you mean successful, right? Or something like that. It's like, but they are. They put really good content. They're a very good, like, people. I mean, I don't want to say business couple, like, but like business partners, but
like I don't know. I think that they sort of
complement
ebb and
each other.
flow. The yin and the yang
yeah.
to each other, that like they fill, in the experience that the other one needs,
Yeah. And you could see it in their presentation and hear it in the things that they say and how they interacted with each other for everyone and how they read the audience. I think they did
how
that.
They read the audience?
Yeah, I think they were really, because one of the things, they started to speak a little more about the action stuff, and then people were sort of like, well, we really want to know more about the cinematography aspect, and things like that, and how they were able to just pick that up so quickly and go with it. And that's important when you're doing presentations. Not
to completely derail this, but I will say what's been very fun for me is I've attended the festival 3 years in a row.
Yes.
The first year was the year that I met Ryan in person, and Ryan held a workshop that year. And then the next year I held a workshop, right, and then this year Joey held a workshop. So it's been super fun for me.
That's funny.
No, but it's been really fun for me because I've seen everybody's workshops. So I have so much respect for both Ryan and Joey. And it's part of the
reason why I gathered you guys. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
And why I think you're confidently in this show. Because you have something to bring from that experience. I mean, that experience, not just like, oh, you experience running in the fields or something. I mean, the expert part of the experience into the show for our listeners. It brings value.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the 3 workshops were really good. I mean.
Yeah. I got something. Obviously, I did one of them, so I didn't get something.
Yeah. But
in I got something from both Ryan and Joey.
In 2019, we had a workshop with John Woosley, who also did a presentation, and he brought, I don't remember exactly, but he brought a cage, and he was using Filmic Pro, and we were projecting the view from the camera onto the big screen, and he was using actors as stand-ins to learn how to shoot over the shoulder shot. We always have some pretty good workshops. I just for me, it's like, the Mobile Film School, non-accredited, is actually the one that puts these on. And it's always been, well, let's have the people that are doing these films bring these together. But it's not just anybody. It's, it takes a discussion and me finding out more about, who's going to do the workshop before I say, okay, you can do the workshop, or can you please do the workshop,
That was me because I was feeling overwhelmed that year.
Yeah, well, it's sometimes that is it, because it's like some people don't realize that they can do, and I'm the one that twists their arm and say, yes, you can, just watch it.
It was you and my producer. You were the two that twisted my arm, so that's the reason we did it.
You did a very thorough workshop as well.
We're good.
Okay, and then what happened next, as we're going down the line telling this story of the film festival, I guess, the other thing that happened was we recorded a session of the Fading to Film podcast.
Yeah.
And we talked about some things, together. And I thought, I felt like, Ryan, I am going to publicly apologize, because I felt like I was like CNN or something. I was like, all right, that's all the time we have right now. And I had to kind of cut you off. And I felt so bad, because normally I don't have to do that. If the podcast runs for 3 hours or something, it's like, well, I'll have to cut here and there. But I felt so bad when I had to do that. Like, you're like, okay, and now, because you're excited about what you're going to say, because you have good things to say. And I just felt so bad. So I publicly apologize, Ryan. I'm sorry.
No, I wasn't offended, but thank you. But
okay.
I
think. Oh, go ahead,
I was going to say, I listened to the episode when it was published yesterday.
Yeah.
And because Levi's had the first block of it.
Yeah.
And
I hope I didn't talk too long.
No.
I was actually so, I was starting to kind of clam up, not knowing what I was going to say. And I kind of it's like, so some of the things when re-listening to the episode, I realized I'm like, wow, like some of the things that you said, I didn't even hear you because I was so worried about what I was going to say.
Oh, interesting.
A little bit of stage fright type thing.
Yeah.
No, I totally understand that though, because I experienced that too. So I'm so glad that I was first.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like the whole time you're chatting and I'm like looking at in person, I'm looking at you, but in my mind, I'm going like, what am I about to do? Like
100% relatable, understandable. Yeah.
It's like when you're in class, in debate class or something like that.
Yeah.
You're like, but you know, for me, I was also keeping track of the time as well as I was listening to all of you.
Yeah.
So, but I'm a podcast host, and I've moderated so many of the Q&As and conversations and things like that. That for me, that was not a big deal. But I totally get what you're talking about, because that's happened to me when I was in college and other places trying to do a presentation. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But you guys did well, really well.
No, it was a good time. Like I think, but I felt the same. Like I felt even as I was saying things throughout the podcast, I was like, where is this thought going? You know, like, so it's one of those things where you just trust that you know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
you know?
and it's not, it's live. It's right there. Everyone's right there. Yeah. So it is really, part of it is a performance, you know?
Yeah.
So that's funny.
Yeah.
Not like what we do here, guys.
I mean, this feels so much more informal because it's like, it's just the three of us or four of us when Joey's here in a room together, or, you know, on the internet together. That it's, it doesn't feel like there's no pressure, you know?
Yeah. I mean,
and we know that Susie has the power to cut out anything that makes us sound stupid.
Pull the cord. Also, the thing is, I've had guests on the show that, and if you're listening and you've been a guest on the show, there are a good number of guests that I've had on the show who had never been in a podcast guest before. And so they were a little nervous. And sometimes if I go back and listen, and I cringe when I listen to them because I'm like, God, I was so, you know, or the sound. And I, you know, it's like I try not to. But once in a while, I'm like, you know, it's like a conversation with a friend. You're like, I wish I could kind of play that back. And in my case, it's like, oh, you know what, I can, right? And sometimes I go back and I listen to someone who's never been on the show, who was a little nervous, who never met me, never spoke a word to me before we started recording. And, well, you know, maybe a few minutes before, but, you know, the first time. And you could hear a little bit in their voice that they're a little nervous. And then as time goes on in the discussion, they sort of warm up to it. And what happens to it, too, is like I've had several people literally admit and say, you know, I kind of forgot we were recording a podcast by the end of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a conversation. It's funny that you even say that because Allison was a part of your podcast.
Oh, that's right.
And Allison, she's admitted to me, and I mean, I hope she doesn't get upset with me for sharing this, but she's admitted to me that she gets a little anxious about being herself in these situations. Like, it's one thing to be a character in a movie, but she gets a little nervous about public speaking. And I think that's a very common thing. I think a lot of people have
especially
that.
The actors,
and
I
so, think. Yeah, and so, like, because you don't want to sound stupid, you know? But I think that there's a level of discomfort at the beginning, and then throughout the process you just sort of go with it, and you start to relax, and you know, so it's interesting. I think that it's just a human thing.
And imagine if if as a host, right, I was very dry, you know, just asking questions. So what year were you born? Check. What blah blah blah, you know, things like that get, if you're not conversational as a podcast guest, host, then you can't really expect something like that from, you know.
It also wouldn't be a very enjoyable podcast to listen to if you were not conversational.
No,
you
and
know?
the person,
the fact that you are conversational. Yeah. And
I also listen. I listen to what, you know, like, remember, you know, just going back to when you were in the podcast and you were talking about, you know, your experience and what made you make your film paralysis and what drove you to it and your personal things and everything like that.
Yeah.
I think being able to share something like that, because you're very open, but I probably think that, you know, by knowing me, right, it probably helped a little bit on getting that discussion. I remember at one point saying, well, I'm not going to be your counselor or psychologist or whatever the hell I said, but
therapist.
You know, something like that. And someone in my family pointed that out. They listened to it and they say, oh, that was funny. Nobody does that in a show.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Also, I hire a therapist and I see her every other week. So.
Maybe that's the word I said. I'm not trying to be your therapist, but right?
Shout out to my therapist.
Well, because I like to think that most of the people that come on this podcast, that they are people that I appreciate in some way or another. I certainly wouldn't have someone on the podcast because I think they're going to be some famous person and that it's going to give me some sort of, you know, I like the idea of having listeners who are making mobile films in the podcast as guests. And that has happened quite a number of times. And I think that's fantastic. So if you're listening and, you know, I'm here to inspire you, you know, to make a movie on your phone, even if you're making movies in some other way, you know, blow your own mind by making a movie, you know, with a smartphone.
I mean, one of the guys this year said the same thing, that he usually does make movies on an actual camera, but during COVID, you know,
Harry Valentine.
Yeah. And I loved listening to him talk about that because I was just like, yes, like inspire people, make the movie. It doesn't matter what it's filmed on, just make the movie, you know?
And so, you know, there have been people, and there was a guy from Australia in 2020, the year that you were there, 2022. And he said he had listened to the podcast and he had a screenplay and he was going to shoot this film on a DSLR or something like that. And he said he got inspired to use his iPhone. And he made that movie and then he came on the show. Yeah. I mean, it happens. And I think that, you know, what I'm trying to say to you guys is you're not just listening to some old podcast, whatever. You're listening to something that it very much includes you. And so feel free to reach out if you're listening to the podcast and you're like, well, I've been listening. Gosh, it's hard to imagine this. Ryan, you have daughters. Yeah. Your daughter is 8 years old, your youngest daughter, right? And this she was 2 years old when I started the podcast.
Wow.
You started, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I said it earlier, but like you and I have been chatting for 4 years now. Like it's...
Yeah.
And I was kind of surprised by that as well.
That is crazy. Yeah.
This podcast was actually the first time I've never been on Spotify available, like where I could hear myself until this podcast, or your podcast, Susie. So, and I remember it was the same. It was the same feeling of like when like MySpace came out, and it was like, wow, I can like be on the internet, like my face.
Yeah.
I mean, now you can Google me. My kids actually go to school and Google Brandy and I. Their mom and I.
I bet that feels so good, though.
It is really cool, actually. I think about that. We Googled you, and there's like,
I love that.
You know, articles and films that they can see. But but so and
films they can't, like Frankencock.
Yes, yes. And all of a sudden they pulled that up, like, that's the thing that was in the garage, huh?
Yeah. That's so funny.
But so that's how I feel, is that like as far as like being the ability or the opportunity actually to be on a platform and be on Spotify, like I hadn't had that, and I was super jazzed back in 2020 when we did our first interview.
Yeah.
Of course, we've done several since then, and now we're on the bi-weekly podcast.
Bi-weekly,
But before that, though, there wasn't this opportunity to share then the experiences of making movies, especially with a phone or low budget. So
Yeah, it's got to be. And also, you've been a guest in other podcasts.
Yeah. Well, yeah, since then I've had the opportunity, luckily,
Yeah.
but you were the first one.
So I,
Yeah.
You might have been my first one too, Susie.
And I remember I was sharing it and I was like, I am on Spotify. I was like, man, like my voice,
I love
my
that.
name.
Yeah.
that's so awesome.
So
I think you were my first podcast as well, Susie.
Really?
Yeah, from I think it was the one it might have been, I don't remember if it was the one we did. It was just after we filmed Paralysis.
Well, you were
and
it was right when you were doing the campaign, the funding campaign, we did one, the first one.
Okay, so that would have been my first podcast ever, I think.
Wow.
Maybe not. I might have done one before that.
I remember you
Maybe.
did one, but I don't remember if it was before or after.
I think it was a voiceover one with my my friend who's a voice actor. But I don't remember if it was before or after.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway.
It's,
Yeah.
you know, so anyways, I guess we're going to talk about the podcast itself. So invite yourselves.
I mean,
you know,
I think it's a great platform for filmmakers.
And that's why I created it.
Yeah.
That's literally why I created it.
If you are a listener and you are a filmmaker, I think you should reach out to Susie.
Yeah.
I think she is a great platform for filmmakers to talk about their artistry, mobile filmmaking or otherwise, regardless. Like Susie is a great platform to talk about your artistry.
Because it's like when you're making movies, it's like, you know, like what a lot of people say is like, well, if you can't really tell the difference between a movie that was shot with a phone and a movie that is or whatever, why should you even call it out anymore? It's just a camera. And I'm like, yes, but when you call it out, you inspire people who don't have any other way of making a film to actually use their phone. And that is one of the reasons, because people would come to the film festival and I would do these short little interviews and videos with them, but that's not the same thing as having a 1 hour, you know, sitting down with someone, no matter where they are, you know, and to be able to record the entire discussion and conversation. Because I was having conversations with them on the phone or, you know, through emails sometimes even, but it's not the same thing. It was like, wow, look at these really cool conversations, but they can't really happen in video, and video is a lot of work. I mean, if I was putting out a show every single week, which I try to do normally, to have it on video produced, something that long, it's very hard to do. It takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot more investment. You know, showing talking heads for me is not something, I mean, I would walk away from it and just put it in the background anyway. So I feel like someone who's doing that is really wasting their resources in a way. It's like putting a movie and only listening to the sound, you know, because there's no movement, there's no real action, there's no B-roll in between. You're not sharing anything other than two people's faces talking. And that's just, for me, I have to be realistic. You know, I don't just do a podcast, for one. So I also run the film festival and other things. So for me, it's like, I do a lot, but I need to be, you know, realistic on my time as well. So, anyways.
I do want to go back to something you just said.
Yeah.
And I think it's just because I think that this is a good thing to touch on. Just you said that some people say to you, you know, like, well, if you can't tell it's shot on an iPhone, why do you make it such a point?
Right.
And I will say, I have been filming on iPhones since 2014. I made 2 short films in 2014, maybe 3. And I've just every year been making more and more projects, and I'm constantly creating something. And there has been a lot of stigma around that. Like there are the people who are like, oh, you're filming on an iPhone, you're not really filming. And so I have had a lot of I've been self-conscious about that, like over the years. Even when it came time to film Paralysis, I was self-conscious about that. And like when we did the auditions with the actresses who were to play the medium in Paralysis, I was very nervous about telling them we were filming on the iPhone. And I remember the day that we told Lisa Gay, who was the actress who ended up getting the role, she seemed a little surprised we were filming on the iPhone. And I was so nervous. And I was like, I sort of put this burden on myself that I felt like I had to prove that the iPhone was worthy, and that, you know, and I think like what you are saying is accurate, that it does matter that we tell people that it is filmed on an iPhone, because after finishing the film, after going through the first few festivals, it took me a little while to get confident, and my producer kept saying, you no longer can have the energy of apologizing. Like you sort of, you move into this space and you're sort of apologizing for the fact that you filmed on an iPhone. And she was like, this looks phenomenal. And she was like, so stop apologizing for it. And it got to the point where I stopped even mentioning it. Like not that I wasn't mentioning, like, but that I stopped apologizing for filming on an iPhone. And most people's response was, oh, I had no idea. And so it became a point of pride that it was filmed on an iPhone, because I filmed it on an iPhone and it still looks like it does. So I think you are right in that, like, we need to have pride about that, and we need to share that, because I think that, like, there are still people that are going to be naysayers, but we are the people who are going to prove them wrong.
Yes.
You know, like, so to any filmmaker who just wants to tell your story, film it on your fucking iPhone.
Yeah.
Film it on your iPhone and like show everybody what you can do, because you will be surprised and they will be surprised, you know? Yeah.
And,
That's the war cry right there.
That's the what?
That's the war cry right there.
Yeah.
Well, here's the other thing. I've watched
but
hundreds of films shot with iPhones and smartphones of all sorts that come through the film festival. And mind you, that the films that come through the film festival are completed films that people feel this is good enough to go into a film festival. Here's the thing. I've watched so many films made by indie filmmakers who cannot be compared to what people are making with a phone, right? I'm talking about short films now.
I mean, I went to festivals.
And I think there's a psychology behind when people get behind the phone, what you just touched on, that they get nervous, that there's a little bit of stigma around it, and they go, well, man, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to put all I can in. I'm going to show them. And that's something that normally doesn't happen when someone just got their $20,000 camera for their birthday. They're like, I'm going to make a great film because of this camera, and they have this false sense of confidence, you know,
and think, oh, I can fix anything in post.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, sorry, Ryan, you wanted to say something.
I said it before with my film, but like there was a time period where, like, when the French New Wave kind of stuff was coming around, there was a time where you know, during World War II, people had these like handheld film cameras that they were not people but soldiers, but like anyways, and they were, you know, filming the wars that was going on. Then post-war, that's the camera that Godard and other people were using to shoot their films. It's kind of no different now. Like, it's in your, Susie, you always say it's in your pocket. It's right there.
Yeah.
And I think it's best, as you were saying, Levi, like it's best left as a surprise. Like, I shot it on a phone. Kind of thing. And there was for me, it was, I had to save up money to buy a camera to shoot it on mini VHS. And, but if you're a person now and you want to make a film and you don't have the camera, you most likely have it in your pocket.
Yeah.
And so just,
it's just funny
there.
For some people because they do so many other things on the phone. Right.
Yeah. And so start there. And it's really our conversation a few episodes ago about story. Actually, something I didn't understand until we were chatting about it was that, like, because we were talking about stories important, and I said it out loud before, and then later I was like, wow, what I said I really believe in, but I didn't realize it was like story execution. Like, because like John Wick has like a simple, very simple story, but the story execution is great.
It's fantastic.
Crank is a movie that has like a very simple story, but the story execution is really fun. And then if you can do that with a phone, you know, why not? And we're so accepting of movies like Clerks or Scorsese's first film. I have it behind me. I shouldn't even look at the title. I should know off the top of my head.
I don't know.
If you don't know it off the top of your head, nobody does.
I'm looking right at it. Hold on. Oh, who's knocking at my door? God damn it, Ryan.
Dang, I was so close to finding it before you.
I do have the DVD behind me. I've been fortunate enough to, my wife allows, as I say, to all my DVDs are actually organized by director. So,
I love
wow.
that.
So
mine is by genre.
Yep. So not by genre, which I used to have, but now it's by director. So sometimes I, you know, so if you're looking for like Naked Gun Part 2, it takes a second to figure that one out.
Oh.
I never did. I used to have a lot of DVDs, but I moved around so many times. I lost so many of them, but I never did that. I would as soon as, so for me, it was like the new one goes here, the new one goes here. And I would just kind of, I was able to say the ones that I bought from a long time ago and just kind of go down the line and find out which one it was that, you know, the one I bought 3 months ago is like 3 DVDs back, you know.
Yeah.
Sure.
That was the way I organized it.
Anyway, so I had to turn to the Scorsese section. But anyway, so his first film was Who's That Knocking at My Door? And Harvey Keitel. But, you know, they were shooting it. He's not shooting it in 35. Like, he's not shooting it in like, or not 35, but he's not shooting it in like 70 millimeter, right? Like, he's
sure.
Like, so what's the difference between them shooting their films on 16 millimeter compared to us shooting it on an iPhone?
And I'll be honest, even looking back at some of these old movies, the quality that we have with our iPhones is better quality than you know, some of these older indie films that are beloved, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to a lot. I mean, it'd be nice if we could say, well, there's just 3 things, but it comes down to the audio. If you listen to a movie from, you know, just even the 2010 or 2011 and you listen to the audio, it sounds really boxed in and tight compared to the audio that we listen to now, right? Even shot with a phone. And there's so many little differences, but the one thing we can say, which I'm always going to emphasize no matter who argues with me, is that as long as you have a great story, that you have it, whether you have it storyboarded or whatever, you have the vision of how you want that to be presented. You have a structure for it in some way. You know, even if it's just in your heart and in your soul, when you go on set, this particular scene, this is the killer scene. This is the, you know what I'm saying? Though even if no one else knows it, you as a director, that's your job to make sure that happens, right? In the way you want it to.
And even going off of what you're saying, like the best and I've probably said this on multiple podcasts that we've recorded together, but the best compliment that I ever received from any film festival happened when I was in Australia, and somebody walked up to me and he was like, horror aside, you are a phenomenal storyteller. Yes. And I was like, yes, that is exactly what I want. Like that is what feeds my soul. That is what keeps me going. That's the reason I am alive, is I am a storyteller. So to get somebody to say that to me makes me go, fuck yes. Like I feel that I have accomplished what I want, you know?
And don't be ashamed of being so meticulous, no matter what anyone says when you're on set. I am you. Please. Yeah. Because being meticulous. I'm very meticulous. Being meticulous is knowing what you want to the T.
To a point.
Oh,
To a point.
Although at
to
this
the
point, I
T.
can't touch the movie anymore.
See what I did
Yeah.
there?
Argument. To a point. To a point.
To a point, yeah.
To a
At
point.
some
No,
point,
but
you
I
have to
mentioned
stop.
the T
Like,
because that's my favorite
Yeah.
short film from Levi.
Oh,
from
yeah.
me. I
Okay,
appreciate
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah. If you haven't seen the T,
Yeah.
any listener, go watch it. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead, Ryan.
No, I was digressing. We were speaking so positively, and then I was going to say, but perfection is the death of art.
No, I
So-
mean, I think you're right, though. I think, and it goes back to sort of like, I have not been able to keep my hands off of paralysis, and at this point, I have to because now we're going through distribution.
Yes.
We can cut it short, but my tidbit on that is on anything. Not speaking about paralysis directly, but like,
No, you're fine.
is that there are some other times where I have to say, okay, this is the draft, and that's just the draft
Yep.
that we're running with.
Yep.
And we just move forward. And I mean, with my feature film, it's on Amazon Prime. There's plenty of things that I would love to change about it. I'm never going to reshoot it.
Married and Loving It. Audience members, go rent by Married and Loving
yes.
It.
There's plenty of things I'd love to change about it. It's never going to happen because I'm just going to move forward on something else.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing. You have another chance from what you learned from that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying, oh, Levi, don't learn from anything. Just go do and grind on this one particular thing.
Yeah.
The point is that he knows what he wants to put out. Every good director knows exactly what they want.
Yeah.
And they have to make it. Film is not just art and it's not just tech, it's both. It's a science and an art.
Yeah.
And it's that blending.
Yeah.
And the more that you're willing to face both sides of that coin, the better that you're going to become as a filmmaker.
Yeah.
And you'll know because that's the result.
Yeah, one of the big things with film as an art form overall is because it was science that got us to the point of being able to film.
Yes.
Like the actual the emotion and the plastics and the chemical reaction and whatnot is what got us there. And I was having a chat yesterday with somebody else who was doing a interview with me that they're going to publish here in Ogden. And I was like, I use the word film a lot, and I know that sounds kind of pretentious, but I never have actually shot on film minus photography.
Right.
I've done photography.
But yeah, the science of is where actually film begins in a sense, because of the fact, even the projection of it, the light projecting through the film onto the screen. And now what we're saying, our discussions every week are kind of begin like the new app that's coming out, the way the sensor is in the phone. It's all technology. So
and that's part of the science
one of the things that makes
too.
it really exciting about film is that it is so science based, and at the same time art.
Because the story part, how we structure the story, is the art, especially when you put your heart in it. I mean, we, without bringing AI into it, and I just did, but I'm just saying there's the human factor is the art factor. And that's part of feeling the story. That's
something that AI can never give is the feeling. They can imitate it, but they can never give it.
Yeah. So okay, what did we miss? Now, I do want to point out to everybody to go and Google what this new app that Final Cut just came out with, because it hasn't come out yet as of today, but it will probably be out within days. They'll make it available, but I think that's cool. However, I still think that the Blackmagic camera app is pretty awesome. And I'm sticking to that.
Certainly better than Filmic Pro, which I have a personal vendetta against since they effed over their loyal customers.
I think a lot of our listeners are happy for Blackmagic coming out and doing that and appreciate that. But also, I also just found out that Rode has a cage for stabilizing it as a grip, and you can attach lights and microphones and all the tripods and things on it. my point here is that the technical gear is really taking off in the mainstream brands that usually didn't do that, in that same way, which kind of, it's like, oh, look, that's a sign of the progression of this. But it also, don't forget the pioneers that started these things, at the same time, because they're the ones that made this possible. They're the ones that,
and if you have, I know, I think we've talked a little bit about them, but I have customer loyalty to a certain,
I do.
To a couple of things. Not Filmic anymore. Moondog Labs has still my favorite anamorphic lens, and I know that the Moment lens is also nice, and I know there's a bunch of others, but to me, Moondog Labs is the anamorphic lens. And I also really love Beast Grip mode. Like, Beast Grip has like a really nice cage, and I know that you're talking about the Rode one, but I really like Beast Grip.
Yeah,
so, anyway,
and I like Zacuto. So
yes, you do. You love Zacuto.
Freaking love that thing. What can I say?
Yeah.
And also
It's
the
nostalgic.
Micro Boom. The Micro Boom.
Oh, the thing that was on the front, right? That I
with the
almost hit Ryan with at the festival.
That thing is awesome.
Yeah.
But anyways,
Ryan.
and by the way, they sponsored the film festival, so we got to thank them for that. Yay!
Thank you, Zacuto. Thank you, Zacuto.
Thank you to everyone who sponsored the film festival actually this year.
Yeah.
Thank you to everyone who came, all the judges, all the participants like Joey and Stephanie, and you guys for participating in the recording of a session of our podcast in front of everyone, which after 6 years we had never done before. So that was really cool. And thank you to all the filmmakers. Last episode, I put the link to the awards on our website, but I'm going to do it again just in case you missed it, so that you can see who won. And also, if you go to our website, you can see all the filmmakers that submitted, all the ones that participated, all the ones who attended. I want to give a big shout out to everyone in this year's film festival, because you are awesome. You're part of the community. And I hope I can see you and the ones from previous film festivals. Look, you don't have to make a film to come and join and be a part of the community again and just celebrate and support this community. So just come back, if that makes any sense. Do you guys have any last words?
I don't think so. I have loved being a part of this, and I will absolutely be making stops in when I am more available, because this is a community that inspires me and keeps me excited to be a filmmaker. So
yeah, we're gonna miss you, but we know you're coming back.
I will be back.
Ryan?
The show as we have it is, part of the heart and soul is between Joey and Levi and I and Susie, and so in this break that you have, deeply missed, and I'm going to miss your energy on these episodes as we move forward. I think for anybody who's listening, as we've kind of said, if you have the vision and you have the story, and it doesn't matter if you have the talent, it's actually if you have the drive, and grab your phone, open up the camera app, and run with it. And we want to see, the festival just played, and submissions are opening up in June.
Yeah, June 19th.
And
I love that Ryan is selling the festival already. I love that.
Yeah. We want to see your films. Like, you have a story, and
I agree.
It could be, stories can be political, personal, or they can just be for fun.
You know what? Go watch The Tea, and Ryan, go watch Married with Children.
Married and Loving It.
Married and Loving It.
Married and Loving It. And Levi, your film is going to be out somewhere soon. Do you want to share that really quick?
So Sure. So I don't know the exact release date yet, but they did say after I get all of the deliverables in, it could be anywhere from 2 to 4 months.
Okay.
So I would say come September,
Ooh,
and I
for
hope September is when
Halloween time.
That's why I really hope that they release it in September. Paralysis will be available. I know for certain it will be on Amazon. It will. They said it could potentially be on Tubi. I think there's like a process there. Pluto TV, Roku, anywhere that you can stream films, Paralysis will be. So just look for Paralysis, and if you can't find it, look for Paralysis and my name, Levi Austin Morris.
And I will say, if you've already watched the film in one of the film festivals, you're going to have to stream it because obviously Levi has made changes, right?
It's 5 minutes shorter, everybody. It's changed.
It's like the Lethal Weapon, like the Donner cut is like 30 seconds short or 30 seconds longer. It's like with these 30 seconds, you get to see
but it makes a
action.
difference.
So watch it again.
That's so funny.
That's awesome. All right. Well,
but everybody who has seen the new cut has said that it is far superior. So
definitely.
Just give it a watch.
All right.
Anyway.
We'll say goodbye to our listeners.
All right. Well, goodbye until next time.
Ryan?
Sorry. I shed a small tear.
He's crying. Yep. He's crying because I'm leaving.
I'll see you guys next week. But
yeah.
Levi, damn it.
I'll be back. I will be back. It'll just be a little while. Don't make me feel guilty, Ryan.
I messaged as soon as I read Susie's email.
I know.
I messaged you directly. I was like, what the?
I know.
All right. And cut.